Go to TAPgiles.com to learn dreams, engage my services, and support the channel. So, I made this thing, the Inspect View demo. So let's just look at it first. Cool. So first off, I can rotate with the left stick. So this is like something you might find in a RPG or something, and you can look at objects. I can go up and down, and that'll rotate it that way. But in some games, you can kind of end up with it kind of lopsided like that, and I want the book upright, so it's all nice. So I've added, you can use L1 and R1 to rotate it that way. So then you can get it kind of looking nice again. I can use right and left on the D-pad to go through different items. And it's a shiny gold piece. And I can like zoom in with R2 on things like that. So if I go into the book, there's a thinly veiled secret. It's a secret code. And the book resets its orientation. So if I like make it squiffy and then go to a different one and go back to it, it's reset it to the original position. And the coin doesn't. So if I go back to the coin, it's still in the same place. So you can do it either way, whatever you want to do with it. So I started with the book. So I'll bring in this book over here, and I'll just open it up and stuff. So I'll use studio lighting so I can see what's going on. And I want the book to be open a little bit. A little bit more. Okay. And an important part is to have movable off for all of this stuff, so that it doesn't like flop about as we rotate the whole object. There you go. So this is just a group with the book in. So put it in front of the camera, kind of center it nicely. And now we want to just rotate this kind of in place. So for that, I'm going to use a advanced rotator because it has like separate speeds for all the axes. And then so if you surface snap that on there, it will rotate it fine. But I want to be able to turn on local space, which means I can like position this wherever I want, and I can just set these axes. So if the camera, so you can see the Z isn't quite dead onto the camera, so I can just rotate it a bit so that it's facing the camera more. Adjust that however I want to. So you don't have to rely on like keeping this on perfectly on the grid. So that's what the local space helps you do. So let's get a controller sensor from here, and we don't need to possess it or anything. So I'll remove these wires and set it to remote controllable, and now it will just output the values from my controller. And I'll use left stick local to affect these values. So I need to get kind of the up and down and left and right values separately. So I'll wire that into a splitter like that. So this wire has multiple colors going through it. It's got red and green, and then those come out of here as red and green separately. So I can get the separate left, right, and up, down values using the splitter. For now, I'll set Z to 0. So that's like moving around like that. And then X, I want to kind of rotate it like this. So the one that's rotating like that is the Y axis. So I'll wire that into the Y axis, and that will just multiply the left right value by 180 degrees per second. And then when I push up and down, I want it to rock back and forth like that. So that's the X axis. So I'll wire that into the X axis. Yeah, and then I'll just go in here, and then if I push right, it's rotating right and left and up and down. So that's all fine. But as you can see, it's kind of getting that weird thing where it's going off at a funny angle now. So for that, we can control the Z axis. For the demo, I decided to use L1 and R1 to control that. So L1 to like rotate that way, and R1 to rotate that way. So if we go and get a combiner you can set to different modes. So this is a stick, so it's splitting a stick value, which is like here. So then I get an X and a Y input, just like as I have an X and a Y output from there. So you can use the combiner to make those kind of fat wires, they're called. But if you don't want to do that, you can just leave it on signal, and it has a plus and a minus going into it. If we send in a value to the positive and another value to the negative, it will subtract the negative from the positive and just output that number. So it's fairly simple. So if we just wire L1 into negative and R1 into positive, then we can wire that value into Z, but I want to use like the default value there for the setting, for the speed. So I'll press triangle on there and it goes to 180 again, and then I'll wire that in there. So you can see it has this X. You can actually change that with L1 and X on this little wire tab to go through these different wire blend modes. You want the X one, which is called modulate. So that's going to multiply, that's like between 1 and -1, that will be, and that will multiply that by the speed. So let's try that. R1, it's going the wrong way around. If you find that it's going the wrong way around, there's a couple of ways you can fix it in this case. The simplest is to edit this with L1 and square, and then you can just add a minus in front of it, and now it's going to go the opposite way. So R1 and L1. But if you don't want to do that, you can flip these wires around. So it's going that way. Let's try that. R1 and L1. So now I can rotate it in all three axes at once using the sticks and the L1 and R1. And to make a new object that can appear here, I'll just put this stuff into a chip first. So to make a new object, I'll just turn that one off, and I'll import another one, like the pirate coin that I showed in the demo, and we'll just wire that into the same object, and now it all works exactly the same. But it looks a bit funny because of how the lighting, what the finishes are and stuff on here. So what you can do quite easily is, so we can have another light like that. That's more like it. If I turn that one off, if we turn the book on again, it's very bright and it's just like too glowy. So really I only want this light to affect that coin when that's being shown. So if I just group those up like that, then I can have, for just testing right now, I'll just have a switch going into that group. I'll turn that off. And I'll have another switch going into the book. And that one will be on. Cool. So now this one isn't affected by the lighting of the coin. The back of the book is quite dark, so I think I'll add another light below pointing up, just for the book. So I'll make another spotlight pointing up, and I found if I make it really far down, I look at it from the back like this, then I can have this be quite subtle like that. So yeah, then we'll group that together, and this switch, instead of going to the book, will go into the book group. So if I go X-ray mode, then you can see this is the group with the light in it, and that's what we're wiring into. So now that has a bit of an edge light going on from below, which is cool. So instead of using switches and stuff, I want to be able to change this in real time. So I'll delete those, and I'll have a selector in here. So a selector has lots of channels, and you can, like, only one of them will send a value at a time, send a signal. So if we wire that into into the book, because A is always the first one, so the book will be the first one to be powered. And B is the second one. We'll put that in there. And now we can just cycle through these by sending a value into next output. So I'll use right to go next and left to go previous. When I press right, it goes to the coin with the extra light and then back to the book. And it will remember like how it was rotated. So if I go to the coin and then back to the book again, it's still there. And it doesn't matter if you like change halfway through, it doesn't mess up or anything. But if you want to kind of reset the book to be the same orientation every time, then you can do that by going into this group, and then we want to set the position of it with a keyframe just briefly. So we use a timeline and make it real short. So drag the edge with X, and I'm going to zoom in with L1 and right on the D-pad like that. And now we get these columns. So it's like this is like one frame at a time, one logic frame. So this is very fine tuning the timing. So let's get a keyframe, and we just want to tap that, but I don't want to move it at all. So I'm going to turn on grid and tap it with the grid on, and it's much less likely to accidentally move it. So like if I had the grid off, when I touch it, you can see it kind of moved a little bit. If we have the grid on, then I'd have to move it like a huge amount for it to make any difference. So that's setting it to that position. We want this to be 2 frames long like that, and keep changes. So keep changes means it will set it to that position, and then it will leave it in that position, and it will still be allowed to be rotated by the advanced rotator. But also we put it onto 2 frames, because if you only put it on 1, then it can kind of mess up with the physics of like the rotator and everything. So we put it onto 2 frames to make sure it goes into that position and it stays in that position. There's no like physics going on within these 2 frames. Cool. So we just set that to once mode, and that will make sure it always plays from the start to the end. And then we want to power it with a wire. So just a switch will do. And now every time that group turns on again, because we switched back to it, it will play this timeline. It will put the book back in its original position, and then it will let us move it around again. So move around and then go to a different one, the coin, and then go back to the book, and it's back in the original position. And if we deleted that timeline and rotated it into the coin and then back, then it's in the rotated position. So you do that either way, it doesn't really matter, it's up to you. Cool. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to learn something new every day.